welcome to my beautiful unschool life. I am telling the story of building Erin's tiny homestead, which sounds really lovely. Previously, I posted a 10-episode series of what happened when I moved to a permaculture farm and built my own tiny house and launched a business over there for them, and then having it all fall apart and having to leave that property and moving to my boyfriend Don's property. So now I'm telling the story about building my farm on Don's 2-acre property, a job that isn't finished, even though we've been at it for a year and a half. I should say it is November 2nd now, and it is only 5 degrees outside today, but inside my house it's a toasty 28 degrees, and that's why I'm wearing a tank top. So I will pick up the story when I was still across the road at Laura and Garnett's farm. We had already decided to start increasing our food production by hatching some eggs. I had already found someone who raised silkies, and she gave me a dozen eggs. We put them in my little incubator along with some of the eggs from my own chickens that are just mixed breeds, and we were back in the baby chicken business. Did we give Peep the right name? Because Peep does a lot of peeping. This was the last gasp of this sweet little incubator that was given to me by my father. My father used to use this incubator when I was a child. He hatched quail mostly in this incubator. So I was really happy to inherit this incubator, but it was on its last legs. I had to rotate the eggs by hand 5 times a day, every single time that I used it. And this time around, the heat fluctuated all over the place, so I knew that this might be the last time using this lovely little incubator. I haven't thrown it out. It doesn't work anymore, but I haven't thrown it out. The priority in moving across the road to Don's house was getting me a garden prepared, and he started that right away. He used his tractor to till 2 plots that were 40 feet by 20 feet, and he took his big dump trailer to a friend's house. His friend raises beef on a large scale, and he has a seemingly never-ending supply of aged manure. So we brought home 3 dump trailers full of aged manure. He also took 2 dump trailers to his mom's house, so he was pretty busy that spring. Watching Don use this dump trailer was reminiscent of my childhood experience around farmers with finicky machines that require constant jerry-rigging to get them working. And that is absolutely true of this dump trailer. Machines are way outside my comfort zone. I have very little experience driving tractors. I learned how to drive the tractor when I was across the road at Laura and Garnett's, very begrudgingly. I hate to rely on machines because machines break. Installed it. And I don't know how to fix them, and I can't afford to pay someone else to fix them. That's why I like to do things by hand. Because if you rely on machines and then they break down, then you're stuck until you fix the machine. Whereas when I do it by hand, the only thing that can break down is me, which happens all the time. I break down all the time. So I was always very hesitant to use the tractor when I was across the road. But at least Dawn knows how to fix the machines when they break down, so I don't feel quite so much pressure to not damage the machines. Before I knew that I would be leaving Laura's farm, we ordered a dozen meat chickens from the local farm store. These little babies are called rustic rangers, which are a heritage meat breed. Now, when you first bring home day-old chicks, they have never eaten any food and they have never drank any water. So one of the things you're supposed to do is dip their beaks in the water so that they learn what it is. And my kids are always very enthusiastic about this job. Don was really unsure about the children handling the chicks. He was worried that they were going to hurt them, which is a risk, absolutely. It's always a risk that chicks can get injured. However, my kids have been around chicks for years, and our experience has been actually they pay very close attention to the chicks, and they're more likely to notice abnormalities. So when you order a dozen chicks, they always give you an extra because it's assumed that the stress of the transporting of the chicks is going to have a negative effect on them and you're going to lose chicks. So they always give you an extra just in case, and we've never lost the extra. because Bethany keeps such a close eye on the chicks. She knows how to recognize pasty butt. She knows how to treat it herself. She was the first one to notice when we had scissor-beaked chicks. She pays attention. So to me, any risk of having the kids handling the chicks is far outweighed by the benefits of having the kids handle the chicks. So they play a big role in raising chicks on my farm. It's hard, isn't it? I wanted to replicate raised beds without having to actually build raised beds. That's what I had in my dream garden when I lived with the girl's father, and I was heartbroken to have to say goodbye to it. And so building this garden here, I really wanted to replicate having raised beds for a couple of reasons. One, raised beds have better drainage. Also, raised beds are just easier to reach, I find. And the problem I had a lot when I was across the road was the kids running through the garden, and they had a hard time telling where they could walk and where they couldn't walk. Whereas raised beds make it really obvious. This is where plants go. This is where people go. I really like that sort of delineation. So I wanted to replicate raised beds by raking the soil out of the paths and onto the rows. Another big job that Dawn and I had to do was we needed somewhere for my chickens to live. We had plans to build a chicken coop, but we knew that we were going to need more than one coop anyways. So at that time, the girl's father was disassembling my garden and everything that I had built there. So we decided to take advantage, and we went down to his place with the truck and the trailer, and we loaded my old chicken coop into the back of the trailer. Now, that chicken coop is, often when I talked about building a tiny house, I said that I built a tiny house with no building experience beyond having built a chicken coop. This is the chicken coop that I'm talking about. It's pretty flimsy. It was designed to be inside of a barn, so it's not weatherproof in any way whatsoever. It was just built to protect them from rats and mink and things like that. But it was a coop. So we brought that to Dawn's house, and then we had to put a roof on it, and then eventually we also put walls on it. The coop is a priority for a couple of reasons. One of which is I, at this point in time, had 19 chickens living inside of a cardboard freezer box in my tiny house. Having 19 chickens in my house meant constant dust, constant mess, constant noise, and constantly having to try and manage the relationship between the cats and the chickens. Now, the cats needed to learn about chickens because they will be existing together on the farm. So they need to have a healthy respect for each other. But it would have been really nice to not have that happening in my kitchen. So here I am, building my third garden in 4 years. This is going to be an in-ground garden, which is new to me. And right now I'm covering the rows with some old wood shavings from my chicken coop that have been around for over a year. I don't know if it's going to work. Everything I do is an experimental, which is driving Dawn crazy because he's used to a very specific garden style, and I just like to experiment and play around with things. So I'm definitely testing him. So remember, up until this point, I still lived across the road. So I was working the farm over there, living over there, and then walking back and forth across the street multiple times a day. I'm on my way back to the farm to check on my greenhouse and my chickens. Wrapping it up across the road, building something new over here. And it was only at this point that we finally moved the house across the street. And yes, we moved the house with 19 chickens and 2 cats inside. They were not thrilled. The cats disappeared for about 24 hours. I don't know where you can hide in a tiny house, but they found a hiding place, and I didn't see them for an entire day. I still had 2 more weeks of work across the road, but once that was done, I was 100% here on Dawn's property, working only on my farm, which was a really, really lovely... It's always hard living in between 2 chapters of your life. So it was really nice to close the old chapter and start the new chapter. When the cats did come out of hiding, they were really thrilled with their new home. When we were across the road, the dogs almost murdered both cats on 2 separate occasions, so the cats weren't allowed outside when we were across the road. But now that we moved to Dawn's place, the cats were allowed to be free and outdoors. And since Emma was a hunting cat before we even had her, she was really happy with this. And Moon had never been outside in her life, except for the one time when she almost got murdered. So this was a great new exploring for her.
I think she's stuck.
Hi.
Please help me.
Hi, Moon.
Help me. Like somebody help me. I think I'm stuck.
Nah, she's a tough panther. She'll be fine. The ducks, however, were not thrilled with their new home. They kept defecting back to Laura's, marching across the field and across the street back into Laura's farm. The reason is because my rooster is mean to them, and there was no fences here yet, so I couldn't keep the ducks and the rooster separate. And until we got the fences in, we actually gave up and just let the ducks live at Laura's house until we were ready. So it was probably about another month before we brought my ducks back to my house. Nice idea, Abby. All right, can we lead them to the pool? Nice work. Yeah. They're pretty good at following a bucket, aren't they? And the next mission was to get the 19 chickens out of my house. We didn't have a coop for them yet, but the previous owners had left behind this old single wide park model trailer, and they had been using that as a chicken coop. So we scooped out all the old poop, put down some fresh straw, and we put the chickens in there. It's less than ideal because the ceiling is collapsing, but it was really nice to have an option to get them out of my house. That was intense, man. That was intense. We also moved the rabbits over to Dawn's house. Even before my house was over here, the rabbits were over at Dawn's house. The mothers had given birth in Laura's barn, and all the babies had been eaten by rats. So we knew they were pregnant again, and we knew that we needed to put them in a safer environment. So they gave birth over at Dawn's house. Unfortunately, we had a really unseasonable heat wave in April, and we lost half of the babies. Only 2 survived. We also decided to hatch a second lot of chickens. We got a few more silky eggs from the same woman as before, and we put a few more of my chicks in there. We borrowed an incubator from a friend. And 21 days later, look at how many cute babies we had. It's that desperate time of year when all of my plants are way too big for their pots. But I don't have time to plant them in the garden. That side looks good. Beautiful, beautiful. That side, you can see the day when I threw my back out and then got a migraine and then got strep throat. Right there, that's the day. So all of these guys need to be watered twice a day because we're in a heat wave. And the plants are too big for these dinky little pots. And the countdown is on to whether I will get them in the ground before they all die. So the beds on that side I all dug with my hoe. They took about a half hour each. The beds on this side Don did with his backhoe. It took about a half hour total. So now I just have to clean them up. I like doing things the hard way, but I just spent over a week being sick, and I got really far behind and the weeds got really overgrown, and I'm a practical person. So we did it the quick way. Now I have to clean it up with my hoe. So that might take a while, but that saved me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Saved me 4 hours of work and probably a sore back. So I'll take it. We had a raccoon family living on the property, but they didn't give us any trouble, so we didn't give them any trouble.
I want to see too. It's just like, and he's just like, so pretty interesting.
Film your little friend.
When you're lost and no one's there,
Why is he thinking I'm falling?
and you wonder who even cares.
I'm so happy to see you, little ladybug. I've been waiting for you.
Back to your breath, don't drift away from
Bastards.
me. I will come down to remind you of before. We can fly away from here. We can stop.
It's got black skin.
Purple,
My
purple.
dear, swept up and away from all
That one likes to cuddle, I think.
how we supposed
Hold up
to
your
know
marigolds for me.
on our own.
Look at them.
Together we can
That's kinda
go
cool.
slow. Why don't you leave it all
Alright,
to
I figured out where I'm putting things.
I know
I
how
just
hard
gotta
it all can
plant them.
be. I'm here to
But I still
hold you
have
and through this.
a lot of plants
Oh,
to find homes for.
I'll be beside you all alone. My love for you is so strong. We're right where we belong. Wander around the same old town. Your best kept secrets underground.
Walking onion, that's funny.
Your head on my chest. My
be a
heart
walking
beats
onion
for
my
you.
whole life.
I keep my arms out and hold you like before.
So with the chickens on the property and them not having a fence and my garden being planted, it meant we needed to protect my garden from the chickens. So another big mission that we had to work on was putting a fence around my garden. Don knows a lot of farmers around here, which means that he knows a lot of people with a lot of resources. So we were able to borrow a fence post auger from a friend that attached to his tractor. So that saved us a lot of time and effort. Although using the auger was still kind of a lot of work, depending on the soil in different locations. Some spots were really easy to auger out the hole, and some places were a lot harder.
Why don't you leave it all to me? I know how
A lot
hard
of tractors
it all
in this
can
rotted
be.
grandma.
I'm here to hold your hand through this.
Billy Goat with his great big horns. They're like, heck no, I don't like kids.
Beside you all along. My love for you is so strong. We're right where we belong. Together we can go slow.
So for our second batch of chickens, I was not interested in having a giant freezer box in my tiny house full of chickens again. So there's a tiny little room in the back of Dawn's shed that we converted into a brooder room for our baby chickens. It worked really, really well. The temperature was well regulated. It was a good place where we could sit down and play with the animals. We were really happy with that. The next big job was building our second chicken coop. We decided to build the floor using some wood that Dawn had brought home from a work site. It's a great big pallet that's meant for holding some sort of pipes, I'm not sure. So we had to partially demolish it until we had just the right thing for our floor. And then we built the chicken coop from there. With help from Dawn's friend Lance, who has lots of building experience and an air nailer.
He did it.
coop that we've started and haven't finished. We haven't done any work on it since last weekend. We just stalled. Garden gates that we started and didn't finish. Herb planter boxes that we started and are almost finished. So it is now the end of June. I have 1.5 chicken coops. I have a garden well into development, and I have some herb planter boxes, and still a huge to-do list, which we continue to tackle throughout the rest of the summer. And I'll tell you all about that next week. So thanks for hanging out with me. It's been lovely to have you, and we'll talk again next week. Take care.